Andrea Owen is creating a global impact in women's empowerment as a keynote speaker, a life coach, and an author. Her books have been translated into 19 languages and are available in 23 countries. Andrea helps high achieving women maximize unshakable confidence, master their mindset, and magnify their courage. Andrea, I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here, Tracy. Thank you for that wonderful it's actually 20 languages now. That bio is a little bit old, so
Wow. That is so exciting. And I know that you have your book, 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, has just been re-released. So it was so successful the first time around. Was it in 2012 that it came out?
actually January 2014. I wrote it in 2012, and so it's been
Okay.
updated and revised and re-released.
And this update, I understand, isn't just fancying it up with a new cover. It's really updating some of the content, changing some of the content.
Yes.
And I would love to hear what it was that you thought was so important to change in that book.
There was 2 main things that were the biggest changes, and then everything else was just sort of small things that I went in, and I can mention those too. So the 2 big things was I had 3 different chapters on there about body image, and those 2 of them I pulled, and the one that remained I edited a lot. And I basically changed it to emphasize more around, fat phobia, anti-fat bias, as well as, a little bit of health at every size. And mostly the chapters are really short, but I pointed people to experts who are better to talk about it than I am. And then the other thing was the chapter opened with a little bit of what we now call toxic positivity. And back then I was so new and it wasn't just me, it was all of us were kind of in this very excited place of personal development online for the first time really ever. And so the original chapter was kind of a blanketed your thoughts create your feelings, which create your reality, period. And it's so incredibly nuanced that advice is also very much cloaked in privilege and how much access you have to resources. So I edited that because I don't ever want to be dismissive of people's experiences and where they are in life and things like that. So those were the major edits.
I love it. So getting rid of toxic positivity,
Mhm.
I am a believer that mindset is really important,
Yes.
but there's a lot of other stuff that goes into changing your circumstances and improving your life, right?
Yeah, and it's just nuanced. And I think it's a yes, your mindset really is important. And we also have to mention that there are people who have neurodiversity. There are people who have real mental health struggles. Like it's not a one size fits all. And that is one of the points that I made in the revision.
Well, and there are people who have financial struggles,
Sure.
job struggles, and that's certainly the financial realities, let's say, of divorcing women really is
Yes.
going to play a part in how they feel about themselves.
100%. Yes. Amazing segue, Tracy. Thank you.
Well, as you know, our audience is divorcing women,
Yes.
and I know that you are experienced with divorce
Mhm.
because you've gone through it twice yourself.
Yep.
And I want to talk a little bit about your divorce because I think it's really interesting that you are so effective at helping women build up their confidence and become more courageous. And yet, your 2 divorces were really, really difficult on
Yeah.
you personally, weren't they?
Mhm. For different reasons, but yes, both of them were.
I wanna hear some more about those different reasons and the experience with each of the divorce, whatever you're willing to share with us.
Yeah. I my first divorce, we met when we were very young and got married in our 20s, and there was infidelity and I was traumatized from it. The good news with that one was that we didn't have children yet. We didn't even own a home yet. We didn't have any real assets. And even our retirement that we had just set up was separate. So it was very clean in terms of logistics and the practicality of it. It was easy. We just walked away. And but it was traumatizing like on an emotional level more so. With my second divorce, it was very different. We were married for 16 years or no, sorry, 14 years together for 16 with 2 teenagers together, a house, assets, retirement. So you the way I describe it is you get in bed both literally and financially with each other, and it gets very deep, and it can be tricky to untangle when emotions run high, and that's what I found out. I think that I didn't realize like one point that I can make and was the importance of a prenuptial agreement, because at the time I thought like, why would we need one? Not that I thought, oh, because we're never going to get divorced. I was aware like sometimes marriages end. I had a previous marriage end, but I was more so under the assumption of like, we'll make about the same amount of money, and if we do ever split up, it'll just be easy. We'll just split it and it'll be easy. I didn't realize, like, sometimes people start businesses. Sometimes people get into debt, and I'm not saying that this is what my experience was, but just there's so many unknown things that can happen financially and otherwise in your marriage that you do not have a crystal ball about. And so my biggest regret was not spending the, maybe couple $1,000s to sign a prenuptial agreement to protect both me and my then husband and our children, and to protect all of us. We would have saved ourselves so much headache, heartache, and money by doing that one simple thing.
Well, and you make it very clear, if there is a business involved, here is what we're going to do with it if we do
Right.
divorce.
Mhm.
But one of the really little known benefits of doing a prenup is having financial conversations on the front end.
Yeah.
So you're discussing, how are we going to manage the money during the marriage? And then what will happen later if something goes sideways? And just having those conversations and ensuring that you're on the same page financially in the very beginning, I find is so beneficial.
Right, and I the I'm sure that you've talked about this on your show, and I think that people avoid the conversation because if you do it, it insinuates that you assume that the marriage isn't going to work out, or you assume that if it doesn't, the partner's gonna be okay with it, and it's here was the thing that was so eye-opening to me that I heard somewhere online, maybe a podcast like yours, when someone says that if you don't create a prenuptial agreement and come up with an agreement either before or during your marriage, because I know that's an option as well, the federal government will do it for you. I had never realized that. I was like, "Oh, they did." And the state of North Carolina did too. And so that was the part where then I really regretted not doing it, because someone else was dictating what's gonna happen now. And and I cannot emphasize enough that when here's the part that no one could have prepared me for, is that when you do decide to end a marriage, and I think that this can also go in when people have divorces that aren't contentious, you are not really dealing with the same person emotionally that you married. You're certainly not dealing with the same person emotionally that you were in the marriage with when times were good. Getting divorced is usually, I feel like it's where the term emotions run high comes from,
Yes.
because you are not yourself. I'm not putting all the blame on my former spouse. Like, I was not myself. I was not making good decisions that I normally would. I was not showing up as my best self because I was experiencing grief. I was experiencing trauma. So I think that's another thing I just want to kind of hit home for people, is prepare for that.
Well, I know that for women, the most common emotion that I hear them having as they're going through divorce is that of shame,
Mhm.
right? They're ashamed because their marriage failed, and
Yes.
they
I have
are,
thoughts about that.
yeah. Well, the question I have is, how do you work on rebuilding some self-confidence when you're feeling so ashamed, when you're
Yeah.
so grief-stricken over what you thought the rest of your life was gonna look like?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna kind of answer it maybe not as you expect, because I don't want to dive too much into shame, because I think shame is really sort of the result that happens. I want to take a few steps back and say this. As someone who's now I have 2 divorces, and I have a sense of humor about it, because I joke that, like, I'm collecting husbands, I'm a connoisseur. I'm a multiple award-winning divorcee. So I have found it helpful to have a sense of humor about it, because there's still so much shame and stigma around divorce in general, especially multiple. And I had to come to terms with and really work on shifting my mindset about that four-letter F word, fail. It's not. I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as, A, I believe in marriage so much that I did it twice. I believe in love so much that I got back out there and tried again. And here I am, and again, like, dating and because I believe in love. I believe that there are multiple people. I don't necessarily think it's one person that you spend the rest. We are on this earth for 7, 8 decades. Like, that's a long time to be with one person. If you can do it, my hat is off to you. It seems that I, on the other hand, like to do it with multiple people. So I really worked on, I spent a lot of time and effort shifting my mindset of, no, this is our culture and society that's telling me it's a failure. I find it an enormous success that I had a 13-year relationship with my first husband. That from my age 17 to 30, those are massive years. I learned so much about myself. I did it again. I was in a 16-year relationship with my second husband. We built a beautiful life. Ultimately, we had a beautiful life for a long time. We raised 2 great kids. We did it so well together for a long time until we didn't, until we grew apart. As it happens, people evolve, they change, and then sometimes they become people that just aren't compatible anymore. That's what happened in my second marriage. As sad as that made me, I look at that as a huge success. Look at what we accomplished. And I feel like so much of our culture and society, and I think part of it is because we live in America and we find value from productivity, from how good things look, how fast can you do it, how great can you do it, how much more can you do it, that we end up looking at the end result as the entire. We put all of the emphasis on the end result when that's not true. Do you mean I am going to summarize my entire marriage based on the fact that it ended? No, I am going to look at my entire marriage as this beautiful experience that I got the privilege of having. Even though it was contentious at the end, even though we're not in a great place even co-parenting, I still have so much gratitude for him as the father of my children. Like, I know I'm going on and on, but it's like I you have a choice. You have a choice in terms of how you view this event that happened in your life. Do we look at, like, our life as a failure because we die at the end of it? No.
No.
Why do I do this with marriage? So I think that you can nip it in the bud from the beginning. And I can talk more about shame. I know we don't have a whole lot of time. I can talk about shame, and I'll just briefly say this one thing. If you are experiencing shame from a marriage that ended, I invite you to talk to more people about it who have mindsets like me. Do not share your story with people um, who you know are going to sort of collude with you about, like, yeah, it is a failure. Marriage sucks. It's so hard. Men are the worst. Like, you you have a choice in that too. Find people who lean into gratitude and who just have a different mindset about the whole thing, and also who can be empathetic towards you too, because this isn't to be dismissive about your feelings. You're allowed to feel shame, whatever it is that you're feeling, grief, like I do. And so it's about finding people who can have compassion for you and also help put you in a mindset that feels better.
I love the reframe. I agree with not being around people who are going to reinforce that failure because that's not productive. And I agree that we need to feel our feelings.
Yeah,
So you feel the
always.
shame, you feel
Mhm.
the failure. That's going to recur. You are going to have days and moments where you kind of slip back into that.
Oh, yeah.
But can we spend more time focusing on the good things? That I have my children. I would never have had my children if I hadn't been in that relationship.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a beautiful reframe. And
Mhm.
for those listening, I know it seems like it's easy for us to say, Andrea's passed her 2 divorces. She doesn't know what it's like to be me. On the contrary, Andrea does realize what it's like to be like you, and
Yeah.
she did the work. She put in the work. So let's
And
talk
PS,
about
my second
putting in.
divorce isn't even final yet. So y'all, I'm still in it. Like, I'm still in it. It's coming soon. Mhm.
Yeah, but it's gonna take some work.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how are we going to work on gaining some self-confidence, either as we're divorcing or for those who maybe aren't even in the divorce process who are listening, who are just in a relationship.
Yeah. It really comes down to the thing that builds us the most confidence is experience and not necessarily when things work out. So divorce is a great example of that. It truly is walking through sometimes hellfire, walking through the weeds, walking through the fire and getting to the other side, no matter how difficult it was, but getting to the other side. And then you sort of like turn back and look at, or you're, Phoenix rising from the ashes. However, I mean, I have a flair for the drama if you haven't noticed. So looking back at it and saying like that was the worst. Top 3 worst experiences of my life. Do not recommend. 0 stars. And I made it. I made it. And, you know, if it's helpful for you to look for stories of women who have truly risen from the ashes and been so much better on the other end, or even like women who lost everything, who did not come out on top financially or otherwise from their divorce, but ended up having like a massive comeback. Look for those stories to help build your resilience. And again, choose carefully who you're around. But truly, the end of the day, if I had to summarize, like what is the biggest thing, that the tool that helps people with their confidence, it is experience. And no, I'm not going to tell you that it always works out. The net will not always appear, but it's the resilience that you gain on the other end, and you will gain it. I promise you that. That will help you build your confidence.
And listen, I'm a huge fan of working with a life coach or someone of that sort to help you walk through this stuff. You can sit and Google all day long and find stuff on the internet that
Mhm.
might be helpful. But for me, I'm a big process person. And is there someone who can shortcut this for me and help me walk through some steps that they know are effective towards rebuilding my self confidence,
Yeah.
finding a new career, whatever it is that I'm trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and it also, working with a coach or even a therapist who has a kind of coach mindset, they are also able to see your unique and specific blind spots. And
Yes.
and that's what I'm trained to listen for, even if it's not obvious, and a good life coach is trained to do that. And so, and like you said, you're complimenting my, the change in framing things. Like that's what I'm a genius at, and not just for other people, but for myself as well. And so, and I'm not gonna tell you it's easy. Like you just think about it differently, Tracy. Come on.
Right.
It takes work, but that's where a coach can hold you accountable and things like that. So yeah, support is out there.
Okay, so you like to say that women's empowerment begins with women asking for what they want,
Hmm.
period.
Yes.
Tell me a little more.
I started saying that when I was writing my 3rd book, Make Some Noise, because it is, and the reason that I wrote that book is because I realized around 2020, I had been in this business for a long time and realizing that so many of the habits that I talked about, that women engage in that keep them down, keep them small, are, things like, poor boundaries, people pleasing, perfectionism, isolating, numbing out. These are things that we do in an effort to try to avoid shame and criticism and blame. And so much of those behaviors stem from our culture, a culture that tells us that we are valued more if we put everyone else's needs before our own, if we don't shake the boat, make sure everybody else is comfortable at the expense of yourself. And that includes asking for what you want, because it's no secret that women who do speak up and ask for what they want are looked at as greedy and too outspoken and, aggressive, too assertive, bossy. Like the list goes on and on and on. And so I'm not saying, you know, walk around and ask a woman to take off her coat and give it to you. Like not that literal, but like what if you could just take 25% of that? Like what would you ask for if you knew no one would judge you? What would you ask for if you were a man?
Right. Well, we work on this in the divorce money guide because when it comes to the money in the divorce, too many women are stuck saying, he's going to give me, he's offered, and I'm going to accept. No, 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 no. Let's stop for a moment and let's talk about what do you want and need financially out of this divorce. Let's start listing your priorities, what things are important to you, and let's make our ask.
Mhm.
Let's make a really good ask instead of being told you're going to get this.
I love that. Yes, and it's so much of it is in empowering language, truly. Even just, I mean, that's a reframe that you're doing, is just switching that reframe and allowing people. What I would also add on to that is allowing women to sit with that for a little bit and see what comes up. What comes up when you reframe that? Because it probably will just set your brain on fire a little bit, and that's okay. And it just I posed this question in the beginning of Make Some Noise, and it's like whenever you hesitate to ask for more in your divorce, whenever you hesitate even to ask for the divorce in the first place, whenever you hesitate to do anything, it might be helpful to ask yourself the question, what is my conditioning versus what is my truth? I guarantee your conditioning is that you should not ask for more money, is that it's greedy. You know, he's the one that worked. You stayed home, and on and on and on. All the social conditioning that we have. And your truth is that you need money to live. You were an equal, if not more of a provider in the family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So take some time to sit with that. What is my conditioning versus what is my truth?
And let me tell you, it's not greedy. And people tend to approach divorce and the finances from a mindset of 50-50. I'm going to get my half.
Mhm.
And that's all fine and well. But there are many marriages where women gave up careers, worked part time, didn't work at all for a
Right.
period of time to raise the family,
Decades.
sacrificed a lot. And I talk them through how and why we are going to justify 70% or 80% of the money because you were damaged financially and career-wise. Ugh, I could go on and on
I
about
bet.
this.
Oh my God, I love it.
Okay, so we're not here to talk about money particularly. So, what would you say to women who are stuck blaming others for their challenges?
I think that sometimes there is validity in that. I don't ever want to be the kind of personal empowerment person who says, just take control of your life, and by doing that, you need to no, because I think sometimes people are crappy. I was gonna say a bad word, but, like, people's behavior is crappy, and we need to process that, and I think that for women specifically, many times we run right over and ignore anger and sometimes rage. I think that rage is I call it a holy emotion, partly because women are afraid of it for reasons that I will get into at another time. But I think that you need to feel whatever feelings you need to feel based on perhaps someone else's behavior. And then once you do that, like, again, you're in that place of, like, okay, you have a choice. You have a and I also wanna say, like, that's not linear, that thing I just mentioned. Sometimes it circles back and you need to revisit it. Sometimes there's grief involved as well. But then you're at a choice of whether you want to take control and take the next best step for you or stay stuck in blaming other people. And I also invite people to think about when you're blaming other people, maybe this is a spouse, you are giving them all the control. It can be scary also to take back your control because then that means that you're responsible. When you're blaming other people, you're putting the responsibility on them. And it's a little bit of a cop out. But when you can take responsibility for your own healing, for your own mindset, for your own growth, for your own next chapter of your life, there's so much freedom and power in that. And that's gonna take as long as it takes. This is not something that I expect people to, again, get to in one session with me, but I just invite people to kinda look at those steps that I just named off.
Well, yeah, certainly. It's an evolution, right?
Mhm.
It's a process. It takes time. You have to be willing to invest time and go through a process. You don't just wake up one day and suddenly feel empowered and
Right.
confident and in control of everything. But if a woman listening to this today was to walk away with one piece of advice from you, what would that be?
I think it's in terms of this particular show and the listenership that I suspect that you have, I invite them to be very intentional and conscious around who they surround themselves with. I think that many times now that I've done it twice, I think that when we start telling people that our marriage is ending, a couple of things sometimes happen. One, people who are still married get triggered because they might have their own marriage woes and they're worried that you're contagious, or they start to see their own stuff and they project
Or they might be jealous that you had the
that you're
strength to
ending.
leave.
Right, exactly. And sometimes their reactions and their support, I'm using air quotes, isn't helpful. That can sometimes happen. Or sometimes people will treat you like you are I mean, I've had people just fall apart, like, on my behalf, and I'm like, Okay. And then I feel like I have to take care of them, but worse, it sort of sets the tone for the mood. And so, if you've encountered those people, this is where boundaries come in, but also find a community, like other listeners of this podcast. I know there's communities out there, and then there's Instagram accounts even that I follow who are looking at divorce as an empowerment process. And it can be both. It can be a time of your life where you walk through deep, deep grief. And like two seemingly opposite things can be true. You can have walk through this grief, and you can also walk towards the most empowering chapter of your life. I mean, I'm about to be 50 this year, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I am single. I am like, I get to do whatever I want. Like I have like newfound like personality that I feel like left a long time ago. And I'm like, oh my God, there she is. So I say that hopefully to inspire people that there is life on the other end. There's so much life. And I think I'll put a period at the end of that because I can go on and
Well,
on.
no, that was great. Today was so much inspiration and encouragement in such a short period of time. Tell us again about your book, 52 Ways to Live a Kick Ass Life, which has been re released and is ready for everyone to purchase.
It is. I thought I had a copy of it here on my desk, but if people are watching this on video, you can see the pink one is the pink cover is the old original one, and the white one is the new one. It's 52 chapters, and they're short, bite-sized wisdom nuggets. They're only about 800 words each, and you can jump to any chapter and read what inspires you at the moment. And it's really just kind of it's a mishmash of various personal growth pieces of wisdom.
Sounds like it's not heavy, that it's
Mm-mm.
really doable kind of
Yes.
stuff to get you thinking, get you a little motivated.
Yes. We don't deep dive in this particular book. It is a little bit more what I like to call on the surface, but I think everybody needs that on their bookshelf.
Absolutely. I love on the surface books. Andrea Owen, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you, Tracy. And I just want to say a quick word of gratitude to everyone listening. I know how valuable your time is, and so much gratitude.
Thank you.